So what I want to talk about is the next step. When I started n-Lorem, I certainly never expected the demand that we've experienced. But I knew that the demand will be there. We don't have any idea how many millions of nano-rare patients there are in the world, but we know there are many, many millions. So I knew eventually that there would be demand that we couldn't meet with simply charitable dollars. I've been stunned by how much we've been able to accomplish with charitable dollars. And that speaks to the heart of humanity. That speaks to the mission and how it speaks to the heart of humanity. But it's very clear, and it's happened much more rapidly than I expected, that at some point we have to find ways to supplement charitable giving with more sustainable sources of income. And so I want to walk you through what that plan is. This has never been presented, though it's been my plan since 2019. And I didn't want to present it until now because it was too pie in the sky, but now I think we have enough progress that I'm optimistic that we can pull this off. We can't pull it off by ourselves. We cannot pull this off by ourselves. Everyone who cares about nano-rare patients needs to be helping us. There is nothing to prevent you from getting on board with us and helping us get this done. But we do have a plan. And I think the first question I should answer is, why did I pick a nonprofit model to begin with? Well, as I looked at the situation in the US, this was now 2019, the drug division of the FDA made it absolutely crystal clear that there was no path to approval. If there's no path to approval in the US, there's no path to dollars. I do think that's changing. I think there's more flexibility, and the more success we have, the more flexibility there will be, and the more we can encourage the FDA and other agencies to think differently. I completely agree that that is becoming more possible. But the real reason is that as I thought through, well, suppose you have 30 patients, and maybe out of that, you get to treat 10 patients. And if you develop that drug commercially, the price of that drug for you to actually pay the bills is going to have to be $10 to $20 to $30 million a year for that patient. And that strikes me as obscene. That just struck me as there would be no payer in the world that could pay that. And we're already seeing rationing all over the world. In the US, it's sort of subliminal. In single-payer countries, the UK consistently sets prices that it knows the company will not market because they believe their citizens will go to one of the other European countries that pay more. That's rationing. So these prices are not sustainable as they are. $20, $30 million a year prices obviously are not sustainable. And so it struck me that we had to think about new ways, new models, and we had to get people to the place where the agenda was forced on their plate. And we had to have enough success that we could drive people, because of the success, to actually think anew. So from my perspective, picking a nonprofit approach was, first of all, the only approach, but second, it was the most rapid way to help patients immediately. I was watching patients die, and I didn't want to wait another minute until I got to work to try to help. And so, speed. Then I'm a believer in mission. I believe that great missions recruit great minds and great hearts. And I felt that if I could achieve a clear, galvanic mission, I could recruit the dollars and I could recruit the talent to do this well. And it's very simple. We're doing this for no other reason than these patients need our help, and we're the only people who can do it, and do it the right way. It's really, really a very simple message. At the pre-Gallian celebration, I think I said that I've been in the drug discovery industry for almost 5 decades, and I know that the industry has a great heart. I know that most people who go to the industry go in part because they want to help others. But that gets lost in the various abstractions that we have to deal with, all the commercial stuff and everything else. n-Lorem is the most poetic expression of the heart of our industry. It's really simple. So, a poetic expression of the heart. I just said it. And it gave us an opportunity to go to the people I helped put in business, all these oligonucleotide vendors and so on, and say, okay, time to help me. And everyone has ponied up. Virtually every vendor to our part of the industry has rallied to our support, the support of these patients. And that nets us a 40% savings per patient today. 40% savings per patient is almost a half a patient more that I can treat. And so we couldn't do this without them. And I think you heard from them that we pay dividends back in motivating their employees, in redefining what it means for Cytiva to make an instrument for science in terms of a human face, a human being, someone we're helping. And so I think it's a giant win both ways. It, of course, makes it easier to facilitate getting to donors and charitable foundations. It avoids competition with for-profit companies, and that led to the ability to put together companies that have been supportive from the beginning and companies that have joined us over various times. And we're hoping that we'll be able to add many more pharmaceutical and biotech companies in the coming years. And it allows us to rapidly create value. And that's the essence of financing any biotech company, is you have to take every dollar and create value that is, say, 3x that dollar, and then use that to fund the next step. And of course, it doesn't preclude a mixed model at some point, if that were to make sense. You could think about going to Europe, and others are, because there are things like named patient, named doctor, and that sort of thing. But once again, I felt that would be difficult to do, at least with current prices, because even if it's a named doctor, named patient, you still are going to have to charge more money than I want to charge a family to have their loved one cared for. And I'm sure all of you know that there is no place on the n-Lorem application to put financial information. We are committed to equitable distribution of health care. And I think we all need to take that pledge. Rich people shouldn't be the only people who can get their sick loved one cared for. And so every patient is accepted irrespective of financial circumstances. And the only priority that we make is if there's a patient in urgent need. And they go to the top of the list if we think they're going to lose an organ or perhaps die. And we've had patients die. We've had Ryan's sister die. And that's a bad day at n-Lorem. That's a bad day. We don't want any more of that. Okay, what's happened? Well, Jiminy Christmas. Instead of 5 or 10, we have 300 and almost 350 applications. And that's just pushed us. We encountered patient after patient after patient because of delays in diagnosis in urgent need. And so we had to try to meet their needs, which meant raise more money, grow faster, and do more. Because we had to grow so fast, because we had to become independent so quickly, we moved into a lab, and then within a few months, we quickly outgrew it, and we had to re-equip a new lab. And of course, Cytiva helped a lot, and they came and put new equipment in our lab for us. but that's work and it's money. And then to recruit the team that you've seen takes time. And I hope that you agree that this is a unique team with integrated skills that are working together to do this the best way we can to give the best result to the most patients, and that's just real challenging. So the basic principles of financing n-Lorem are basically the same principles of financing any biotech company. And they're certainly the principles that I used at Ionis. In 1989, I started Ionis with $5.2 million. Looking back and thinking that I had the arrogance to think that I could take a blank piece of paper and $5.2 million and create a new technology for drug discovery strikes me as frankly insane, but over those 30 years, I raised $10 billion. And so n-Lorem is a biotech company, and the only difference is that we're deliberately not profitable. If you look around, the vast majority of biotech companies aren't profitable. They just aren't there because they want to be. So the first step is to show you can do it. That meant getting to the clinic with a patient and demonstrating meaningful value. Okay, check. Next step is to provide compelling information that not only could you do it once, you could do it multiple times, and that you had built systems that would allow you to do it for thousands. Check. Take advantage then of our strengths, which is deep antisense knowledge. That's stuff I know. We have a great drug discovery program, and it's automated and rapid, and we can expand it at will. We can add new targets at will, and that's really, really valuable. And then the goal, of course, is to turn every dollar that we spend into 3x value. Of course, we turn it into vastly greater value for our patients who are benefiting with life. And you have to listen to the market. Same here. Where are the dollars for charitable? What kind of product could I maybe peddle over here to this one and that one and this one? That's just financing. It's just stuff that you learn to do if you're starting with no money and need to spend a lot of money. Okay, we made a lot of progress. You've heard 21 approved INDs, 29 patients by the end of the year, a lot more. Great success, great safety. And so now we have hard, cold data saying we can do this, we can do it repeatedly, and we can do it the right way. So we've industrialized the process, we've built an outstanding organization, we have a really powerful ASO discovery organization, and that's all value. And we can use that then to generate more enthusiasm. You folks are here, you weren't here last year. You're here because we demonstrated we could do this and produce value. So value creates interest, interest then creates more interest and more value. Okay, so we have raised sufficient cash and in-kind contributions to do what we've done. I now understand starting nonprofits, and I now understand that this is just almost impossible to imagine that we've gotten this amount of money in this fast to a nascent charitable organization to do what we've done, and to do something that no one had ever done before. It's one thing to be St. Jude, and now you want to be Sanford Health, and you want to help patients, and here's the model that's been done, yada, yada, yada. It's another thing to sell an idea that many people believe was not possible. And then we needed to expand our donor base. We take on directed research programs because they help a patient, they expand our knowledge, and they allow us to increase infrastructure. And we ask our directed donors also to contribute to the general fund, so that if we get $1 here to work on a specific program, we get $1 there to work on another program. And once we had value in place, we could then take that value and begin to apply for state and federal grants, and we've done that. And so it is really pretty simple when you think about it. It takes some money, creates some value, go peddle that value for more money, create more value, and go back and ask for more. And here are just a few of our cash donors. And of course, they're growing every day. There will be more on this list by the end of the year. And these are our individual donors. And we value every contribution, no matter what the size. And we're very pleased to see the growth of our individual donors. But for us to be fully successful, our individual donors need to be numbered in the many, many thousands of donors. And that's something all of you can help with. You can be donors, but you can talk to your friends, your families, your colleagues, your companies, and say there's a good faith effort here that's focused on an urgent, desperate need, patients who are not cared for in our current system. Let's help them. We need your help. We need your help. Okay, now, speaking of funded, directed research, specific things that we've gotten funded for, which allow us to then create the infrastructure that allows us to treat more patients and create more value. We've had wonderful funding with Neil Snyder on ALS, great funding from a wonderful family for ASXL3, DYRK1A. We have a significant program in another rare disease, FSHD2. And of course, we have had wonderful funding from KIF1A, Susanna, Sloan, and now many other KIF1A patients and families. Whoops. And this MAPK is the JIP3 protein that I keep talking about that's so fascinating to me, what we've learned and how it could even ramify to something like some subset of Parkinson's disease. It's really kind of cool. This is our CRO and CMO network. And, you know, every year this is growing. And we keep going back to the well and asking for more. And they keep saying yes. And so we'll keep going back to the well, and we'll keep asking for more. And we've gotten meaningful funding from some charitable organizations, although I have to say it's been harder than I expected. I think there are a lot of organizations that are used to spending money to discover someday in the long-term future a cure. First, I'll come back to cure in a minute. It's another thing, it seems out of their ken to think about, well, wait a minute, here's somebody coming in and say, we can fix your patients today, give us a little money. That's actually been kind of hard. And I think it's just like getting institutions to take on our patients. It's just new. And it takes a while for people to rethink what they're willing to do. Yesterday, there was a conversation about cure. Let me just say this really clearly. Drugs don't cure. The only diseases that drugs cure are infectious diseases and a few cancers. Drugs treat. Drugs treat. But you're perfectly happy taking your Lipitor every day, knowing that because of Lipitor, you didn't have a heart attack at 45 like you would. So it is not a shortfall to have to treat a patient for life. It's what drugs do. So in my perfect world, I'd expunge the notion of cure from pharmacology. We treat. Anyway, we've gotten money from Conrad Prebys, Lampert, San Diego Foundation, Cure, DPLRA, thanks to Paul and Andrea, DYRK1, thanks to Sarah, money from CZI, not much, a little bit, Target ALS, and we've applied for more money. We have grants submitted to a variety of other organizations. And so, you know, we're doing everything we can. Any place that we find an opportunity to raise money, we're doing it. And we've got these applications in. But there's a lot of competition. I mean, there are many, many good causes. We're not the only good cause. And so we're competing with other ideas. And you know, maybe it makes more sense to invest in clean water for the third world than it does here. Maybe that's true. It doesn't make sense to our patients for that. But so we have to compete. We've also gotten through NEAL an urgent grant. We've gotten grants from the California Institute of Research. We have ALS grants, and we've submitted additional grants, and we're now beginning to really work on lots of grants to the NIH. And so we're really pleased that there are a number of NIH people here. Hey, we want your help in getting your money, okay? So come on, guys, get in there and help us, okay? We'll file the grants, applications, just tell us where to go and what to file. And we also have this meeting, which we couldn't do if we don't have the money. I couldn't spend the money on this and take it away from a patient. So this is money that is provided to us by all these wonderful sponsors who support us. So we've done well. And with that momentum, then we've created value. And now we're probably about 2 years to 3 years ahead of where I thought we'd be in moving toward more sustainable revenue. And the strategic principles are any transaction we do must give us upfront cash that allows us to do whatever work we have to do to get that money and treat additional patients. So there has to be immediate gain to patients for us to do a transaction. It must support a broadened infrastructure so that we can help more patients faster and better tomorrow. It has to advance antisense technology. Antisense technology is not like other drug discovery technologies that are static. Small molecule drug discovery hasn't changed in, I don't know, at least 50 years. We are still advancing at a rapid pace. There are opportunities that we can do. Upregulation of translation, we can help 40% more patients if we can do that. If we can do a better job in alloselectivity, we can help more patients. And as we learn more about these genes and mutations and how they play in biology, very often I think we're going to be able to find solutions where we use family members of the gene, they're called paralogs, to do what the dysfunctional gene used to do. We're finding a lot of redundancy, and the more we learn, the more of those opportunities we'll have. And so what we say no to today will not be what we say no to tomorrow. What we say yes to today will grow to be more yeses than nos if you just give us the time. We can solve these problems, and we're solving them. And then the plus of these commercial transactions is that then we can build in. Yeah, I'm getting the sign to move fast, but I'm going to finish this, okay, because this is important. So sit down, Andrew. I'll get done. So, and then we get sustainable revenues for those products that are successful in milestones and royalties. This has been done before. The Huntington Society has done it, and we're just replicating it on a larger scale. And so one of the things that is happening is because of the inefficiency of the tiny fraction of patients that have been, or newborns that have been sequenced, we don't know what the prevalence of these mutations are. And it's turning out that very frequently the mutations are more frequent than we think. We're also considering contract ASO discovery. Again, if it gives us enough money immediately to treat more patients. And we're making basic advances in antisense that we're patenting, judiciously patenting, and those will be valuable to companies like Ionis and all the other hundreds of ASO companies that exist today. So this is the pipeline, and this is the way I like to describe these micro-rare opportunities that emerge. We think they're nano-rare, but we learn that they're not. And now we have clinical data in the patient that de-risk that program significantly, which makes an investment, as Andrew explained, much easier to do because your risk profile just went way down. And so it's a risk profile reduction strategy that allows us to generate dollars. And that's what's shown here. I'm not going to walk you through all that, but we just started talking to potential partners about all this this June. And I believe that we'll be able to close maybe 2 really nice transactions by the end of the year. We have a lot of interest. And I think people recognize that they get double their bucks. They get what they need, and they also get to say that they're participating and helping us help nano-rare patients. And so, I mean, obviously you know about this. This is just some of the opportunities that we have already with clinical data that partners are interested in. This is what we'll have next year with clinical data. So you can see the kind of pipeline that we're building and the opportunities that companies will have to now take what we have and the clinical data we have and use that now to go do a commercial development, meaning that the entire population is helped. So that's the solution to N of few. What to do about N of few? Well, show that you can show benefit, you can do it safely, that the target is right in the clinic, reduce risk, find a partner then to go back and do full commercial development so you can treat the whole population. That's our goal. And that's our N of few solution, and it's going to work. So I can skip all this. We're making lots of advances, and as soon as they're available, we'll be out trying to license them. And as I say, I think we only started in June. How many organizations have we talked with, Amy? 80, 90, something like that. But we are really pleased with the level of interest. So we have a plan. We absolutely have a plan. And we're executing on it. So we're well ahead of our plan. We have clear evidence of interest, and I have a pretty good idea of how much money we need to raise to bridge the gap between here and when we're sustainable financially, and it's manageable. It's a lot of money, but it's money that I think can be raised. And so what we need is help from everyone to bridge us to the period when we can be sustainable, and we think that's in the very near term. Okay? Thanks very much. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Still had a few more slides.
There you go.
This is why Stan and I are good partners, because he can go long and I'll catch us up here. So very complementary to one another. So I'm going to pick up where he left off, really talking about the elements of building an organization that's lasting and thinking about the ecosystem. So just touching on a few things, you've already heard it, we're here to stay, we're excited about that. I think when you first start any new endeavor, you don't actually know where things might turn out, so we're really excited about that. And we've had to overcome pretty significant hurdles. But we, right now, I mentioned this earlier, really want to focus on some of the key challenges that we understand are facing the community, not only ourselves. That includes the access and funding as well. So I'm just going to touch on 7 items. Again, I'm going to try to hurry here so we can catch back up. The first is really the organization, and then I'm going to touch on these other 6 elements and kind of some of the approaches that we're taking to start addressing some of these components in the future. The first is on the treatment administration, thinking about how can we decrease the time from diagnosis to, if we think we can help, ultimately being able to move forward much more efficiently and effectively. Thinking about the long-term and affordable care. We don't want patient families and ultimately physicians and institutions to be having these very large bills and thinking, again, these are effective treatments. They need to be administered for the long term. We've already talked a little bit about the N of few. That's a really critical component. We've made a ton of progress on that this past year. And expanding beyond the US. So we've talked a lot about this as well. I know we've had several conversations with many different patient groups. We have an ASO for one patient in the US. How do we get to the rest? And I'm not going to touch too much on this. I think Neil Schneider will touch on this more, but really thinking about what are some initiatives and operational solutions that we need to put in place for some specific patient groups. So really just thinking about building a foundation for an organization. Again, touched on this earlier, the privilege of being able to recruit excellent talent in the order of the process that requires that talent to be in-house. We've done this efficiently and effectively, and this just represents all of the core elements of the capabilities that we've brought in. It's still a small team. I think we intend to keep it small and to partner broadly, but the core functions are here, and that's been really exceptional. I think another important element, and I know even before I ever met Stan, I'd always heard of Ionis and their focus on the patients. I think that's something that we feel is so important. This just shows you a little picture of some of the walls in our office building in the conference room. Everybody in every role is focused on these individuals on a daily basis. And I think it's about also fostering a culture. So really thinking about what are some activities that we can do to ensure that we're connected with one another, the social activities, general support, ensuring that we're providing opportunities for education and knowledge sharing. I think for myself, continue to learn more about antisense on a daily basis, and really thinking about fostering strengths and supporting weaknesses while we're continuing to grow the internal capacity when we identify some major gaps. So there's a number of elements, and I think it's important to highlight, just we acknowledge, we hear from patient families a lot. Give me the name of a physician, give me the name of an institution who will submit my application. We acknowledge this is a challenge, and we cannot offer ultimately this for physicians to devote their time. They have to decide that themselves. So we're really looking at exploring many different broad approaches. This has included working with CROs to try to get a sense of what would it look like if we actually leverage clinical trial sites, some of these phase 1 units. It's very expensive. We're continuing to explore that. There are several different clinical trial site networks. So the NIH has a few. NeuroNext is one example. Many institutions across the country that have these existing infrastructures that really could allow us to be able to administer the treatment and essentially eliminate some of that burden for the site and the physician selection. And also really fostering the relationship with advocacy groups. There's a lot of the advocacy groups that continue to be impressed that have defined a center of excellence. I think in the past few days I continue to hear about that. Oftentimes they overlap, which I think is really exceptional, and those overlaps really should be also organizations that we're working with if we aren't already. And of course, the consistent engagement broadly. So the N of One Collaborative is a professional society. I think many of you are familiar, doing really fantastic work, bringing a lot of the community together globally. Also, NORD is doing a lot of work in the rare disease space, and that's just to name a couple, trying to engage in meaningful ways where we can provide contribution, and ultimately those contributions can also really benefit the n-Lorem patients as well. So I think just touching on a couple of approaches that we're trying to really explore. Again, I think the first one on the treatment administration sites, of course, will then lead us to being more connected with physicians so that they will come to us with their patients sooner. So that's one solution for this. But really thinking about, and biobanks have been mentioned earlier, or even talking to some of the organizations that have these clinical diagnostic sequencing tests. Imagine if your physician sent out a sequencing test and immediately a mutation was flagged as gain of function, prevalence of this, and it came into n-Lorem to say, hey, you know what, this could be an approach, or at least went to that physician to say, maybe you consider n-Lorem. I think those are the goals. We want to bridge that gap. We're finding a lot of patients that come to us are very advanced in their disease, and we also know from the physicians the earlier, the better. So the access to the affordable care, it's a really critical piece. We've heard a lot, I think, already today, so don't need to mention too much about this. But really, this is much bigger than we are. I think the data that we're providing will give evidence and this emphasis into the payer environment, to policies, and really trying to work with groups like Every Life and other groups who really dedicate their entire efforts to trying to move some of these efforts forward in the rare disease community, and really trying to work with each physician and institution in this space as well. We did talk already a lot about the N of few, so I'll kind of skip over that one. I think really what we're trying to do outside the US, we're still a small team, and I think we acknowledge that there are many more patients that ideally we could be able to focus on the regulatory path in a different country. We aim at this point to leverage the ASOs that have an approved US research IND The reason we're in the US is because we have guidance documents, specific path. It's very straightforward. It's a roadmap. We told you all the details today, exactly what our roadmap is. That roadmap does not exist in other countries at this point. There are a lot of efforts and a lot of conversations, and we're involved in many of them. And so the goal would be to go to these countries, have a physician, a patient in need, an approved US research IND, as oftentimes other countries do defer to the US FDA, to then enable the treatment of those patients. And that may be the named patient, as Stan mentioned. There's specials, there's all sorts of other paths, and there are groups like 1M is another example. I think we had several people here. So really trying to work broadly to think, how can we work with the resource that we have, our small team who writes INDs like in their sleep, but we want to try to help more. And so how can we leverage what we've already done? So that's really a huge goal of ours as well. So in this last point is really thinking about some of these smaller patient subgroups, and I think, Neil, you're probably going to talk about this more, so I don't need to touch on it, but it's an incredibly exciting initiative, really, and this does bring dedicated funding, and Neil Schneider is leading this, and the idea is to leverage the existing knowledge in ALS and the knowledge around genetics, and Brian Trainer's here and others who have been leaders in understanding the genetics of ALS. ALS is oftentimes looked at as common disease, but there are many, many patients who carry these nano-rare mutations. And so we're really trying to tackle some of these operational challenges and be able to ultimately get to the place where we have ASOs ready to go for some of these common genes and be able to work with the physician so that when patients who carry these mutations become symptomatic, they can be treated as soon as possible and not wait until they become symptomatic to start the ASO discovery and development. So I think in summary, giving ourselves a scorecard, we've made some progress. I think we have a lot more work to do. We need your help, I think, like we've said today, and I'd be very happy. I think for those of you that know me, one of my things I love the most is working with all of you. So we're very happy to connect and hear any ideas that you have to really enable us to use what we've learned to be able to bring these treatments to more patients. And I think in summary, I think you've heard a lot about our team and about the accomplishments. And the most important thing here is the partnerships. And just we wanted to say thank you. This is our partner slide. And so thank you to all our partners, and excited to make a few new partnering relationships while we're here. So with that, Amy, I'll turn it back to you.